Welcome back, Ed Kirwan, to the Empathy Edge podcast. I'm so excited to have you on again a few years later to give us an update on all your efforts with Empathy Week and Empathy Studios and all the work you're doing with young people around helping them strengthen and cultivate their empathy, as well as the work you're doing with organizations and leaders now. So we are compatriots on this journey of trying to help the world be a more empathetic place. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It feels like yesterday, but I think we just discussed it's been a couple of years. So yeah, things have changed, but it's really exciting that where we are in the world right now in some ways, and in other ways it's just made it even more obvious that we need more empathy in leadership and we need more empathy in the world.
For sure, for sure. So refresh for folks that don't know you or folks that haven't heard you in a while. Tell us your story going from filmmaker to doing the work that you're doing now, and tell us a little bit about Empathy Week and how it's evolved.
Yeah, amazing. So my background is I was a scientist. I studied biochemistry at university. I spent actually a year in a lab. I was awful at it. They suggested that I did some work with outreach and kids. I loved that. Became a teacher and taught for a number of years in North London in the UK. I was a science teacher. And I left and I just sort of picked up filmmaking as a bit of a hobby to start with, doing some passion projects and work, particularly around homelessness. And I saw and experienced the power of film. Even if I look back at my films then, I think, gosh, they were awful. They still had an impact on people in various ways. And I kind of merged over the years, merged my two passions of education and filmmaking together. And ultimately since filming in 2019, all the way through to now, I've been making films that particularly around people's life stories, cinematic documentary style films that schools can use and educators can use to help students develop that skill of empathy. What's happened since we've sort of spoken is that companies, organizations have picked up on it and said, oh, can you do something with us? And I've trained leaders from organizations like the BBC to private healthcare companies, law firms, even alcohol and beverage companies, basically anyone that works with anyone, which is basically every organization in the world.
Right.
Clearly needs this skill. And I think what's happened since we've spoken is obviously a few years ago is the rise of AI. And I think that has kind of pushed forward this agenda of actually, yes, tech is booming, but what's left is actually the human skills. That's what companies are hiring for. We're seeing a mental health crisis in young people across the world, social media and the internet and addiction to phones and all of this sort of thing. And actually what schools are looking for, what companies are looking for is actually the same thing. How do we develop as humans? How do we be better for ourselves? How do we be better for other people? Essentially all of our work now is combined around using film as the tool. Empathy is the skill we're developing, and we are an education company as a whole. So that's where we're at.
I love it. And I know that you used some of this as an educator in the past, yes? And I think I recall from your story last time that you had some great success with building empathy, and sort of that was like the seed of the idea of Empathy Week. And now it's a global movement. But can you share a little bit about that personal story of how you leveraged film and then discovered the impact on behavior and on collaboration?
Yeah, so obviously when I was a teacher as well, I used video and film, and it wasn't mine because I wasn't even a filmmaker, I'd never made anything, but I used film can get you from 0 to 100 very quickly, more quickly than someone talking. I think even if you took the best speaker in the world, whoever that is for whoever, maybe it's Nelson Mandela for some people, for example, you could take his story, and obviously he's been dead a few years, but you can take some of his work and his quotes and you can add music to it, make it cinematic, and that would have more impact than hearing him speak live for 10 minutes, potentially. I think that's the power of film. It can really supercharge emotions, it can supercharge feeling, supercharge connection. And I used to use film with a group of young lads they were self-called themselves the U Gang. They basically all failed their mock GCSE science exams. These are like exams in the UK when you're 16 years old that allow you to progress, really important exams. And they all got ungraded, or U, which at the time was the lowest grade. And they came up the stairs one day shouting, "You gang, you gang." And
they
it was
embraced
really,
it.
you know, sweating at the top of the stairs I was before. And then obviously I like put an act on to try and tackle these young boys who were disenchanted with the education system, felt left behind, a lot of anger, chip on their shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
trouble with the police, gangs, that sort of thing. But inside were deeply emotional, wanted to do well, wanted to be seen, heard, understood. I had the basketball connection. I'm 6'5", I'm quite tall. I play basketball, which didn't match up in their mind. Geeky science teacher, basketball, hip hop culture, bit of a clash,
Yes.
but really good for them to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically worked with them for a year, and I used NBA highlights videos and also
Yeah.
motivational speeches, Kobe Bryant and various ones as a reward, but also as a like, stop complaining, like get on with
Mm-hmm.
it. Yeah, your life's tough, but and use videos to motivate. And
Mm-hmm.
you started to hear them almost like jokingly say some of the quotes, but
Mm-hmm.
also realize that they were sifting in.
Yeah.
And like you said, I took a few years away from education, well, from teaching, but realized that actually Empathy Week came about from my experiences of filming and my experiences of education.
Mm-hmm.
And really, actually, it sounds a bit harsh, but a lot of the education film material that's out there is
Mm-hmm.
crap.
Yeah.
Like, it's not very good.
Right.
And it's not entertaining, and it speaks too directly to the issue. So
Right.
if it's about bullying, it's basically someone saying, "Don't bully, you could hurt someone's feelings,"
Yeah.
and you see the eye rolls of the
Right.
students at the back of their head.
Right.
Whereas actually give them a story that is about bullying but doesn't speak directly about it, or is
Mm-hmm.
about, I don't know, it could also be about positive things, about following your dream and your passion,
Right.
or it could be about health issues, it could be about diabetes. We
Right.
recently made a film about a Mexican filmmaker. He speaks about lots of things, from grief to passion for football to the culture of Mexico.
Yeah.
But the first sort of 2 minutes of the film, he talks about diabetes. And I've
Uh-huh.
just visited a school 2 months ago, just before Christmas, where the head teacher said that film allowed a young lad who'd just been diagnosed with diabetes to really come out of his shell and to understand and talk about his own diagnosis of diabetes with his classmates.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the power of film. And this is what I've realized from the 7 years now that I've been
Mm-hmm.
using film,
Yeah.
is originally we were like, great, you're going to develop empathy for the person in the film. And therefore you're going to meet someone and see. But actually, the real empathy building comes after the film, where
Mm-hmm.
people start speaking next to each other. And
Yeah.
I always say, you're either one of two people. You're either person A, which is, my gosh, like that is a bit of me. I feel seen, I feel heard. They've explained what maybe I couldn't explain about my culture or my experiences, and the power of that is afterwards I can talk about that. Maybe it's something like racism or something that I've
Mm-hmm.
experienced that's really bad, or maybe it's something really positive like the passion for music or something, but I can relate
Yeah.
to it, I can talk about that. What happens if I then feel more confident to talk about myself in light of this film is that all the other people around learn about me.
Yeah.
And that is empathy, is the building of human, I call it like human data over time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're understanding what makes someone tick, who are they as a person, what's
Yeah.
happening for them. So that's
Yeah.
person A. Or your person B, which is like, my gosh, I just have no insight into that person's world at all, but
Mm-hmm.
now I've learned it, and I can now at least see what it's like to be from Nepal, maybe, or from India, or from Mexico, or I'm listing some of the places we filmed. But I can also see a bit of myself in that person as well.
Yeah.
And when you get these groups of students or people or leaders or senior leaders start talking about stuff,
Yeah.
that's the empathy building. And what's amazing is that I walk around, especially in like a corporate environment, I could show a film that is just like nothing to do with anyone in the room. What does everyone start talking about the film? They start talking about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I once had a neighbor that did, or my wife's partner, not my wife's partner, that would be not be her. Great, would it? My wife's like, parents, or where she came from did this,
Yeah.
and then you get all these stories.
Right.
I think that the trouble we have in the world at the moment is the time for that to happen.
Yeah.
We're lacking the time for true empathy to really take place.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what we've been doing, and this is how we've been using film, and why I think it's so incredibly powerful to build the skill of empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talked in my first empathy book, The Empathy Edge, the power of story, and, giving people full license to binge streaming networks, to just take in other stories, take in documentaries or fiction or nonfiction. I recently heard a speaker talking about the fact that you're able to actually make more points in nonfiction. This is coming from a former journalist, about the issues because people let their guard down when they're reading fiction. But also there's power in sharing real stories as well with people of just, to your point, it's not so heavy-handed. It's to your point with young kids and even adults, right? Like I clearly see what this is about and what they're trying to make me feel or make me think, versus just telling a story about someone and framing it in a way where they can draw their own conclusions and also just get to know that person. They let their guard down a little bit. It's really interesting. I was watching a few weeks ago, we had our son who's 11 watch The Martian with Matt Damon, based on the science fiction book about the astronaut who gets stuck on Mars because the team thinks he's dead and he ends up surviving for years. And I'm not convinced he was going to sit still long enough for the movie, but he did. And it was more powerful for him to learn the lesson of perseverance and resourcefulness from seeing in the form of a story than a video about you should be resourceful and you should never give up and you should, you know what I mean? It's just, to your point, 100%. There's the rolling eyes, but he's getting that lesson in the context of someone's story. And I think that's what's so powerful about the work you do. And I want to add, since we spoke a few years ago, after we spoke, I brought the Empathy Week initiative, which I want you to explain in a second because it's coming up again soon, to my son's school. And the feedback was phenomenal. Some of the teachers didn't implement it the right way, but now I know it's, now you've made it free. You've made the resources available. You guys have tuned and tweaked things. So it's really easy for teachers to implement. And I love that you're now branching out into doing this work in organizations too, because even as I was kind of experiencing it, I was like, oh, there's so many organizations that actually need this. And now you've branched out to that. So, we got to experience it firsthand. Can you explain for anyone that's not familiar with it, what that initiative is? And then help us understand how it fits into your larger initiative of Empathy Studios.
Yeah. So since we've spoken, we've, like a lot of businesses, had to tweak, change, constantly grow. Essentially, Empathy Studios is our mothership, our umbrella organization. And we are now Empathy 365. And what we're doing, we're just about to launch it. We're launching a platform like Netflix, like an empathy streaming, but original content, all of our original films. So that's going to eventually be available for schools. And this is a decision to, one, make it listening to teachers. How are they using things? Like you said, they weren't, the teachers in that other school didn't necessarily, some of them didn't necessarily implement it. What has everyone used? Everyone's used YouTube, everyone's used Netflix or some sort of streaming provider, and then do it. So we've basically user experience, creating a platform with all of our content. So rather than 5 films a year, you're actually going to be able to scroll and go through things in shorts. So we're creating this just like amazing platform of content, which will eventually produce more and more. And now Empathy Week is our festival. So that's our festival that's free for anyone, anywhere in the world. And now what that does is it doesn't have a full film program, but it does have film content. It has lessons. We now have training for teachers. So we have accredited CPD, continual professional development training for teachers. So that can be online. So any teacher in the world can access that. It's saving schools money whilst delivering value. We've got one on AI and empathy, which is led by an amazing teacher called Scott Hayden in Basingstoke, which is a town in England. And he's kind of head of tech and learning at college there, and he just is phenomenal. His CPD got rated 96%
That's great.
score, and there was like 150 teachers on this, and he's coming back for round 2 because obviously things move so fast. And then we've got like the Ruth Strauss Foundation. They're talking about grief and bereavement. And how to teachers to support, because teachers don't get this training. So they're doing an amazing session on that. And then we've got Born Free, which is an international wildlife charity, talking about actually challenging some of the things that we do, especially in primary schools, around animals and empathy for the planet and empathy for wildlife. So all of that's free, and that's just for teachers. We've got assemblies for primary students, and we've got on-demand speakers. So we've got 6 professionally filmed sort of TED style interview of people from Rob, who's basically this producer in London. He's produced songs for the 1975. I don't know if they're big in America or not, but like they're known sort of all over the world. He's produced like loads of their songs, Holly Humberstone, other things. He's just talking about how did he get into production. And so rather than it be like, careers advisor at school or college, this is how you do a career, do this test. It will tell you what careers you might like. screw that, get to this. This is a guy, and he's like, to be honest, I don't even know really how I got here. I did this, and I did this, and I did it. And it'll be different for you. But this is what we're trying to do. So that's Empathy Week, and that's free for any school anywhere in the world. Last year we reached 500,000 students, which was amazing. We're already at, I think, going to beat that this year again.
Yeah.
We're seeing this need, and really, the way this works is Empathy Week is really the gateway. It's the entrance. It's free for schools and any educators to get involved. And then our platform with Empathy Studios
is ongoing.
It's ongoing.
Yeah.
It's the nitty gritty. You can then search for things. But I think I want to make this point. We used to charge, depending on the size of school and whether you're a private or state or whatever, it got a bit confusing. We were charging anywhere from £600, GB pounds, all the way through to 1,400. We have basically made a decision as a team to go for scale, and we think we can get lots of schools involved, but to bring the price down. So we're charging £395 this year for a year subscription. It works out at like 20p per child for most schools. That's the equivalent of, I don't know, 40, 50 cents.
Is that to the platform, or is Empathy Week is going to be free?
Empathy Week's free. Empathy Week's always free.
And that's the gateway.
Platform,
yeah.
And what we say in our team is we are trying to make the skill of empathy equitable.
Yes.
Because the OECD have basically said that the students that have the least amount of skills in social emotional learning are the most disadvantaged.
Exactly.
When we spoke about disadvantaged students 5 years ago, we meant purely academics. Now, it still is academics, but it's also social emotional learning.
Right.
What's the World Economic Forum just released, last year, year before? The top skills for 2030, 7 of the top 10, including empathy, are human-based skills.
Yep.
So if the top organizations in the world are hiring for human skills, of course, AI and tech is important there, but they're hiring predominantly for human skills, and the most disadvantaged students in the world are having lower levels of social emotional learning. How can we say as an organization, we are here to develop the skill of empathy and build the empathy generation if we're not making it equitable?
Exactly.
So conscious decision. We can't do it. We can't do the platform for free. Film is incredibly expensive.
Right.
But this is our sort of mission to sort of build it in everyone. And I think, come and join us.
I mean, to your point, that's actually all the research and the data that's coming out around with the change in AI. Number one, what's required to help current workers navigate that change is empathy. That's actually going to help catalyze people to adapt and be resilient in this change. But number two, and I've said this many times, with AI, that is going to create an environment where leaders who are hiding behind all the doing and the tasking, and they sit in front of their computer and they don't interact with their teams, they're going to have nowhere to hide, because it's going to lay bare the fact that they are not skilled at collaboration and innovation and motivating their teams and figuring out how to remove barriers and how to innovate. Those are the skills that AI can't replicate. There was a study done by MIT about the 5 complementary skills necessary to reap the benefits of AI. And those top skills are very human skills. It's empathy, it's emotional learning, it's resilience, it's all of those. I'll put a link to that study in the show notes, but that's exactly your point. And when we're talking about readying young people for the jobs of the future, yes, we still want to teach them how to code. We still want to teach them how to do all this stuff, but AI is going to be shifting what they need to be proficient at doing. And I love that you're taking the stance of, if the people that are falling behind the most already do not have access to these human skills, that's just going to exacerbate the socioeconomic gap. And then they're going to graduate from high school, graduate from college without the skills that they need to compete.
Yeah. And then we're going to see unemployment levels, right?
100%. Yeah.
Everything that everyone's fearing will come true. But I think what's interesting about kind of AI is people think, it gets so good and then it will just take everything. But I've started to see, I don't know if you've seen the Apple TV logo, the new one, how it was made. They purposely decided not to use AI, and they did everything human. So they cut out the glass for the Apple logo. They did all of the effect. They could have just made it in 45 minutes using AI and using tech and using digital. They decided not to. Coca-Cola, on the other hand, tried to use AI for their advert, and it flopped. And what's interesting now is that the higher level, from a company perspective and from a brand perspective, value is going to be value, and how your brand company is perceived is going to be higher if there's more human
100%. Yeah.
More humanness involved in it. I've just seen at the weekend on Instagram a prompt about people are turning AI generated photos where everything looks like plush into realistic. There's a prompt now to make it look realistic as if it was taken on a phone. So this prompt is now make it look worse. So it makes it look more believable.
Right.
People that I know purposely put spelling mistakes in their emails. Like, we as humans are so clever and so adaptable, and everyone's so scared about AI doing everything perfectly and taking over. But actually, we adapt. People haven't talked enough about how we adapt around this as well. And I think there's this need to build the human skills is becoming more and more important, because that's the AI is going to take a lot of the hopefully boring, dull stuff,
right?
And we are going to be able to engage more as teams and be creative and have the time to do that. I think if we look at it through that lens, it's important. But the fear is we don't have the skills to do that because we've been doing too much, maybe.
Right. Because we're focused more on the technical skills than the people skills. And hopefully with the dawn of, not the dawn, it's already here, it's the day of AI, we're starting to realize that that's where we have the hole in proficiencies and in leadership and in all those places. So the companies that get it are like starting already to prepare for that. And I would also submit the school systems that get it are starting to realize this ahead of the curve and doing as much as they can. I would love you to take a moment to talk about the results that you, in the past years, you've been doing Empathy Week. What are some of the results your team has found? I know you had some independent entities that were doing some auditing of changes in behavior and changes in issues just with the population of the kids that took part in Empathy Week. Can you share some of that with us?
Yeah, so this was actually based on the program, which would essentially equate to the platform, but it's the lessons and the films, and we have a framework which is empathy for myself, empathy for others, and empathy in action, and that breaks it down into kind of three subsects that schools and teachers can focus on. And when we're talking about then a story, or we're talking about what's going on in the world, we can first start thinking about ourselves, and why do we think the way that we think? Is that because of our upbringing, our culture, and connecting with that before then thinking, why is that person acting in that way, or why are they doing that? So then what do we do about it? The action piece.
Right.
And we've kind of used that framework throughout our films and throughout our lessons. And we basically did a pilot study in 2022, and then we did a bit more of an in-depth study in 2023-24. And we had the University of Cambridge kind of come and look at what we'd collected and found. And basically what we, nothing's ever perfect in this field of empathy and self-reporting as well. And as a scientist, I know that. But we got like massive PR from what we basically put out there, which is what we showed, that teachers reported improved behavior after just 5 films and a set of lessons. They showed that students actually had a more awareness of other cultures, and actually also that their self-esteem increased. And I think for me, it's common sense, right? If you spend time learning about other people, and if you do it in an environment where, like a classroom, where you get to talk and listen to other people talk about their lives as well as those people that you're experiencing. If I'm sat at the back of a class and someone in front of me has just talked about actually they moved country and it was really hard for them, and they can relate to that story. Yeah. Am I less likely to throw this rubber at the back of their head? Maybe. Yeah. My argument would be yes. Yeah. And what happens if you do that? What we found is that it has to be consistent. That it can't be this, here's an empathy assembly.
Yeah, it can't just be the 1 week and then it goes away. Yeah.
And it can't just be the one drop in the ocean. Okay, this is a consistent practice of how are other people thinking? How am I thinking? And we have, for example, it's not new to us. Lots of people have a feelings wheel or emotions wheel, but we put that before and after a film. So we do a check-in. How are you feeling? Watch the film. How are you feeling now? And often those two things change. Yeah. We do this with corporates as well. This is the great thing about what we do. It just works with everyone. Actually, everyone can do it. What are you thinking, feeling right now? Media, and that could be any media. It could be a book. It could be a thing, but we use film. And then what are you feeling afterwards? Yeah. And the change between those two, when you start asking questions, okay, you don't need to necessarily tell me, but I'm almost certain those two things have changed. every now and then you'll get a kid be like, no, I was bored before, I'm bored now. But
Of course, yeah.
but mostly
contrarian, yeah.
Yeah, mostly you'll have, oh, well, I now feel inspired, or I feel sad, or I feel hope. Okay, why? And then when you start asking why, they go, well, this part of the film or this part of the film said that. And then you start to like unlayer what this does. And if you do that over time, what happens is also teachers start to understand their students more. They understand maybe why that student hasn't done their homework. So rather than coming in and being like, where's your homework? You haven't done this the second time in a row. They're actually like, single parent, they have to leave the house really early because their mum leaves for work, so they've got 2 or 3 jobs. They actually stand around in the cold for an hour before school. Don't have access. You then start to go with using empathy in action.
Right. What can we do?
It's the second time in a row your homework hasn't been done.
Right.
How can I help you? What's going on at home? What's happening? What can I? And it takes patience, and it's hard, and it's, it sounds so easy to just say. I've been there, I've been in the classroom, I've been doing 14-hour days. You don't see light as a teacher in winter. All of it, I get it. But the more that you do that, you build relationships, those relationships and trust and connection. And I always do like this sort of kind of backwards circle framework, which I basically say, look, we all want to have great well-being. We all want success. We want to be productive. And we want to, do well, achieve. Now, if you go back a step, think about the best time in your life when you were like the happiest, or, where you didn't have any worries and you felt good in yourself. I almost guarantee you had great relationships, right? You weren't worrying about going home. Was that your relationships were in a great place, or you didn't have any arguments with friends at school or anything like that. Just what makes great relationships? Trust. Trust is built on connection. And connection is built on the skill of empathy. Yeah. You can only truly connect if you understand someone, if you can enter a little bit into their world. Yeah. If we develop that skill of empathy, you can build those steps, and you can build great relationships, and you can build a foundation for great well-being, for productivity, for success. The key, though, is to connect that loop and continue to develop the skill of empathy. Because if you stop, then you stop trying to learn about other people. You stop trying to like build those relationships. Yes. Something happens and it all breaks down. I think that's where companies struggle with change, because change happens and all of a sudden the system breaks and
Well, and I think it's like you said, it's about consistency, and it's a practice. So just like you wouldn't just go to the gym once and be like, I'm in shape now, right? You keep going back, you keep strengthening that muscle. You have your off days, you have your good days, and you have to maintain that. And so you have to be able to maintain that muscle of being able to ground yourself and be open to another person's perspective and point of view. But it also means you've got to do some work on yourself. My first 2 pillars in my empathy framework for effective and empathetic leadership are self-awareness and self-care. You've got to have that capacity. You've got to be constantly checking in with yourself on, where am I today? Am I able to listen to Ed's idea without defensiveness or fear? Am I able to welcome a new team member who is neurodiverse and might work very differently than me? Probably not on a day where I got 2 hours of sleep and I'm starving. That's probably not the best day for me to have that capacity. And so it's equally learning how to take care of ourselves and continue to practice that, but continuing to practice that muscle of curiosity and understanding and self-regulation, right? Can I listen to your story without trying to interject, without trying to make it about me, without getting angry at how you see the world or what's happened to you? That's a muscle that you don't have to build the bicep once and then you never work out again, right?
And it gets, and like the gym, it gets easier, right? Yeah. So the more you try and catch yourself, the more you actually are able to do it as well. And I think that's often missed. It is, we always say, the one thing to do to develop the skill of empathy, increase the amount and the diversity of experiences you have.
Right.
Like there's loads of other things I could say, but that is the one sort of line to the gateway into it and the continuation. So watch that different documentary, watch that different film, read that book, follow 4 different news outlets, not one.
Exactly.
All of these things.
Well, and I was going to say, this is where film and theater and books and music can help, because maybe you are in a homogenous community. And you're like, but I don't have access to all these different people. How am I going to understand them? Well, go find those sources. Go find the films, the videos, the documentaries, the books, all of that and make that a practice of like, I'm going to read about someone whose life is different from me, or I'm going to watch a film about someone whose life is completely different from me.
Or ask that colleague. I know people get a bit uncomfortable about this, like asking colleagues or friends or people about their backgrounds and things, and like, or it might be too invasive. And I get asked this question, like, how do you ask this question? I say, because I sit and ask people in interviews, sometimes very difficult conversations, very difficult questions.
Yeah.
You know, I've asked, for example, Pete, who's now a friend, but I've asked him, did he feel guilty about finding notes from his dad after his dad took his own life? Can you imagine asking that question in a room one-on-one? Like, it's a very difficult question to ask.
Yeah.
And risky, but that you remove the risk by being human. And I say, anytime you don't know what to say or you don't know what to ask, you start with, I don't know if I'm asking this in the right way.
Right.
And you have all of the, and like, I'm coming from a place of good intention and wanting to learn. And it's been on my mind, but I just wanted to ask, like, you haven't really spoken much about moving here 10 years ago. How was that for you? Because obviously it's a completely different culture. Like, you can ask questions and someone might shut you down and they might be offended. But if you put it in the right way, they shouldn't be offended, and that's actually on them. And there's so many different ways to like learn about things and people. And on that note, part of what we're also doing is we've put 5-6 films now of ours, which previously were behind paywalls. They're now on YouTube. So if you want to experience some of the films that we've got, and again, increase the amount of diversity of experiences you have. We've got Lipper, we've got Huss, we've got Tendi. Trying to think who else is on there now. Actually, Tendi's film is now an international film festival select for Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival for 2026, which is super exciting as well. So yeah, if you're like, oh, but film, can it really? And also, if you're in a rush, all of our films are like 10 minutes or less, and we've got versions for students on there. So
well, and I want to mention too, for anyone listening, what I also loved is that you have age appropriate. You have age appropriate films and age appropriate discussion guides. So it's not like a kindergartner seeing the same film as an 8th grader. So I wanted to make sure people understood that. It's the same story. It's the same person, but it's presented in a way that's age appropriate so that they can maximize what they get out of it, right?
100%. And so that we can be a whole school. We're not in early years, we're not in under 5s yet. But also one of the things we have been asked in the past is, or people have said, could you do animations and things like that? And actually, we've been into schools and said they love the fact these are real humans. They get loads of animation, loads of Ellie the elephants and Tony the tigers and Peppa Pigs and all of this stuff. They get loads of these animation things, and this is actually a real human. Yeah. And I think that is the power of some of the stuff we're doing. Yeah. Okay, it might be super simple for the age of, could be Moni in Mexico. She talks about her passion for music and Mexican culture. And it's 2-3 minutes. And it's just, but the 5-year-olds get to see, that's in Mexico and that's in Mexico.
Well, they get to see a person that looks different from them as well. Yeah. Like not just a cartoon rendition, but an actual person. And I think they talk a lot about proximity helping to build empathy and exposure, because if the more you are exposed to other people who are not like you, the more empathetic you can become and more understanding and curious. But I love that it's not animation, and it has its place. Of course, it's done wonders, but also, not dumbing it down for kids because they're a lot smarter than we think they are. Now, is everything age appropriate? Of course not. But being able to show it, that's what I've always loved about the work that you're doing, is that there was something for a teacher at every grade. And there's something for a student at every grade to be able to latch onto and say, oh, I can relate to this story, or I can understand something about the story, or maybe this evokes something for me.
Yeah. It's exciting talking to you after like 2 years, because I realize how far we've come, and also just the stories of teachers. And our ambition is to, at the moment, we're producing like 5 films a year. We want to up that to 15, 20, or maybe imagine one every 2 weeks coming out. And creating this environment where, we talk about enabling everyone so that they can be seen, heard, and understood. Yeah. Because I do believe if everyone felt truly seen, heard, and understood, there would be no war.
We'd have a better world for sure.
Oh, for sure. Because everyone feels, doesn't mean we'd all agree, doesn't mean everything would be hokey-cokey. It just means there would be connection. And as I've said, connection builds trust, and trust builds relationships, and relationships builds well-being and the ability to connect better. So people, I think this is the thing in the corporate world and in organizations, our mission collectively and of all the other people that are in this field is we need to turn that dial of empathy as this soft, fluffy thing into this is a hard skill.
Yeah.
And
it impacts results. Yeah.
It impacts results. It's a practice. No one has mastered it. No one ever will fully master it. That's exactly the reason why you need to work on it continuously. And if people dedicate their time to doing that, they will see these, what they would call previously intangible results, become very tangible.
Yes, absolutely. Amen. All right. I love it so much. We are going to have all of the links in the show notes so people can get to the YouTube page, and also the information on Empathy Week if they're interested in participating in that. But for anyone who's on the go right now, where's the best place you want to send them?
Gosh, I would say get involved in the festival. Go to empathyweek.org, and then if you want the platform, empathystudios.com. They're quite easy to remember, hopefully.
Perfect. Well, Ed, I am so excited. I'm excited to try to bring this to my son's new school this year, and I hope lots of folks listening will think about bringing this into their own organization or their own kids' schools as well. So thank you so much for your time. More importantly, thank you for the work that you're doing in the world.
Thank you for having me. And hope to hear from people listening soon as well. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Please rate, review, and share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, please remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.